Welcome in, everybody. Great to see you. FCS Playoff Quarterfinal edition of This Week in CA Football, powered by Geico. Bobby Broyles here, joined by my colleague, Tim McDonald. There's a lot to get into with just 8 teams remaining in the playoff field. But before that, let's look back at Saturday's second round, which included New Hampshire's upset of Central Arkansas and JMU knocking off Stony Brook to win its 24th straight game, tying for second all-time in FCS history.
And it wouldn't be early December without talking a little bit quarterfinal playoff action. The fourth time, in fact, in the past 5 seasons that CA football has had 2 teams reach the stage. So it's always good to be still talking about multiple teams at this point.
Yep.
2 top 4 seeds were upset on Saturday, one of them coming by the hands of New Hampshire over number 4 UCA. The Wildcats strung together maybe their most impressive, collective, complete team effort in that 21-15 win, hitting the Bears. That was their first FCS loss of the season, had won 10 straight. The defense forced 4 turnovers and made 9 tackles for loss, including 5 sacks. I mean, Evan Horn came up with a critical second half pick 6. Rick Holt and Jawan Horton both had monster outings to lead the way, and the defense answered the call in the final minutes. Everything was kind of on them, and at the end of that game, and the fumble recovery sealed the road victory. You saw just a really big win moving forward for this team. We'll get into it a little bit later. We saw quarterback Trevor Knight go down with an injury in the second quarter, and backup Christian Lupoli was ready to go for that next man up mentality. 8 of 10 passing with a critical fourth quarter touchdown pass to Malik Love. And obviously, we're going to watch and see how things develop. I know there's going to be a lot of questions this week leading in to see if he is that guy. The good news is he got it done last week. Not a full game, but he got it done for New Hampshire. Yep. And we'll see what's going to happen under center for another test. South Dakota State coming up. You also have to give credit to the Seawolves of Stony Brook on a great year, matching their season wins record for a single year. 10-3 overall, finished the season. Madison clamped down and then some in that game, recording 5 interceptions via 5 different players in the 26-7 win. Early it was close, but you just felt like Madison was kind of grabbing the momentum as the rest of the game rolled on. Brian Shore now stands alone atop the program record book for career completions. Quiet 26 of 35, 2 touchdowns. Receiver Terrence Hollis became the first Dukes in 13 years to have double-digit reception totals. 13 years, first guy. He had 10 catches for 94 yards and a score, and amazing that Joe Carbone, the Stony Brook quarterback, entered that game with just 3 picks on the season, too, to just show you how critical those interceptions were and how critical, really, the James Madison defense has been playing. 15 straight wins now at home for JMU, sets up another Friday night spotlight this week against Weber State. If both the Dukes and the UNH Wildcats win, we'll be back here in a week prepping for a CA football semifinal matchup in the Berg. Just to give you an idea, obviously, if JMU keeps winning in New Hampshire, JMU, the number 1 seed, will keep staying home as well.
Getting into those quarterfinal contests right away, Tim, beginning on Friday night at Bridgeforth Stadium as the top-seeded Dukes of JMU welcome the Wildcats of Weber State from the Big Sky on a nationally televised stage at 7 p.m. on ESPN2.
After last year's Friday night performance against Sam Houston State, you almost knew right away, and you had an idea, if things lined up correctly, we would see this in the same spot.
Yep.
And the eyes of the FCS and college football in general will be centered on the number 1 Dukes, riding not only the winning streak, but also the defensive absurdity that's just worthy of the attention.
Yes.
People are going to talk about it a lot, but just one team has passed for over 300 yards versus JMU this season. And Stony Brook, although they did have a passing touchdown, it was just the 5th allowed by the defense through the air all year long, just to give you an idea. And on the other side, the Dukes had 49 rushing yards on just 1.3 yards per carry. Normally a concern, and normally something we'd be talking about a lot more for an average team in the playoffs, but not for Madison, especially this year. News on Tuesday saw senior defensive lineman Andrew Anker was named one of 3 finalists for the 2017 Stats FCS Buck Buchanan Award, recognizing the nation's top defensive player. So shouts to the leader of that unit, the leader of the defense with that honor. And when you lead the way for a unit that has 24 interceptions, less than 4 yards a play, and 235 yards a game, it goes to show you how good you must be if you are a finalist for the top defensive honor. So hats off to Andrew as well. Brian Shore started last week, completing 10 straight passes, and that first drive was just, like you said, surgical and just beautiful, the way that they got out of the gates, and took care of the rock, distributing the ball to 8 different receivers. We talked about different guys stepping up. I must have listened to the show last week because it shined through. But Weber State's defense ranks 7th in both interceptions and takeaways in the FCS and only gives up 16.5 points per game. To give some perspective onto the Wildcats, Weber State got some revenge last week against another Big Sky foe and enters at 11-2 overall following a 30-13 win at Southern Utah. Southern Utah was the 8th seed. The only other time Weber played a CAA team came in the 2009 playoffs. That was a 38-0 loss at William Mary. Remember, William Mary then went to the semifinals, played Villanova and lost. But I know it was a long time ago, but still, just first comparison. The Dukes set a playoff attendance record last weekend and have faced 2 Big Sky teams in the playoffs all time. And A lot of Dukes fans remember those games,
Oh, yeah.
both coming against Montana. That was in 2004 for the national title, in 2008 in the semifinals at home. Weber comes in averaging over 400 yards of offense and has scored both 25 rushing touchdowns and 25 passing touchdowns this season. The Wildcats played a solid schedule with just one loss in league play, the other versus FBS Cal in Week 2, losing by just 13 points. Stephon Cantwell has accounted for 31 total scores at quarterback. Really energetic guy, had over 400 yards of offense last week, and one of 3 primary contributors on offense that averages over 5 yards per carry. There's a lot of unknowns out there simply because of the difference in conferences, the difference in competition, plus the fact that the Wildcats have to travel to JMU outside of their time zone with a day less of preparation. But I think it comes down ultimately, like it has a lot for JMU, staying comfortable in your own environment, feeding off a belief right now of a defense that feels it can stack up and play against anybody at any time, in any place. I think that's ultimately the difference.
Switching to Saturday at 3 p.m., New Hampshire faces number 5 seed South Dakota State out of the Missouri Valley on ESPN3 and the Watch ESPN app. Another set of Wildcats from the CAA make the trip to Brookings for the second straight season.
A couple of keys I want to get into right away before breaking down both sides. But first and foremost, their performance last week on the Stripes bodes well for a team in New Hampshire trying to prove something. And considering UCA won the Southland with an unbeaten record and entered last week with one of, statistically speaking, one of the most prolific offenses in terms of stats, you got the job done and you came through with 4 turnovers. The second straight game you've done that, even with your starting quarterback missing most of that game. So the momentum that has ability to carry over is huge for the Wildcats. The transition on a week-to-week basis in the playoffs often is the difference maker, and sometimes earning an upset on the road instills another level of confidence needed at this time of the year. You need to keep that, and you need to keep it going as much as you can if you're UNH. Heading back on the road versus a very dangerous, a very prolific, and a very efficient, battle-tested foe in South Dakota State. We've already heard a lot of talk about the weather playing a factor. I think you can throw that out the door. You've been to New Hampshire in the winter. I think you can throw that one out the door.
A little chilly.
Remember, Villanova's playoff run a year ago ended in Brookings with a tough 10-7 loss. Field goal bounced off the crossbar. That was the difference. Despite a stout effort that held SDSU to 7 total yards rushing, you wonder how, if any, if UNH is going to look at that game as a blueprint heading in to try to see how they stack up. The question everyone wants to answer it, and we might not find out until Saturday. We might not find out right until the first snap. But Christian Lupoli was forced into action and seemed to get more comfortable as the pressure mounted in that game. He came in with 3 completions on the year. Led a few sustaining drives in that one and came back in the fourth quarter, including that touchdown late, to give his teammates at least some belief that he can be the guy if he is asked to be the starter. Outside of the play of the UNH defense last week, controlling the turnover battle and the line of scrimmage, the ability to run the ball stood out to me as well. Evan Gray had 85 yards on 24 carries. That was his most yards since week 4. And the offensive line gave up just 2 sacks. That consistency, if that's there, if the running lanes are there, it's going to give UNH obviously a better chance, but I also think it's going to make everything easier for a young quarterback on the road. Looking ahead to the Jackrabbits, a team that also avenged a loss during the regular season, 37-22 win over Northern Iowa last week at home. They also beat North Dakota State at home earlier this year and made their 6th straight trip to the playoffs. A lot of comparables, a lot of things are similar between these two programs in terms of what they try to build and what they're trying to do. SDSU's offense often grabs the headlines of the likes of QB Taryn Christian, his go-to targets, and receiver Jake Weineke, and tight end Dallas Goddard. Both consensus All-Americans, both nightmares to plan for because of their size, because of their athleticism. Weineke is 3rd currently with 56 career touchdowns and 272 receptions in his career. That's FCS history marks, just to show you. And a lot, like last week, New Hampshire will hear those names, and knowing the cards are stacked against them, knowing that the offense is so prolific. But from the outsider's perspective, so far that's worked down the home stretch defensively to stoke that fire. Watch for Christensen making plays with his feet. I know he's really been a mobile quarterback for South Dakota State a lot of times. But New Hampshire, I mean, really, they're kind of playing with house money at this point.
They are. If you can't find the links you need for live streams and stats, cafootball.com has all that and more for both quarterfinal matchups this weekend.
You can grab further info and insights ahead of the weekend on Friday by listening to our official CA Football Yak podcast, a nice free way to break up the lunch hour, you know. You just want to take a little break. And you can find that on iTunes. You can look it on SoundCloud as well. We'll have your back on social too. Just search CA Football across all of our platforms to follow along with us.
That's a wrap from us today. Good luck to UNH and JMU, and enjoy the quarterfinals, everyone.